Welcome to this Nemesis Carnomorph expansion tutorial. Today, we're going to take a look at the rules and how to play Nemesis Carnomorph if you already know how to play the original Nemesis game. You set up the board just like any other Nemesis game, with a few exceptions that we're going to go through in this video. Replace the Intruder Attack deck and the Event deck with the corresponding Carnomorph decks. Also, place the character mutation deck next to it. Replace the intruder board with a Carnomorph board. You don't need intruder weaknesses, so replace them with a Carnomorph Adaptions. Draw 3 random Carnomorph Adaption cards and put them under the Carnomorph board. Place a Shambler, a Flesh Beast, and a Butcher on top of these cards like so. Don't forget to put all 8 eggs into the nest. To prepare the bag, you want to add 1 blank token, 2 blue Metagorger tokens, and 2 red Metagorger tokens. Also, add a number of red Metagorger tokens to the bag that are equal to the number of players. So let's take a look at the actual gameplay. If you roll for noise and trigger an encounter, you draw a token from the bag. If this turns out to be a blank token, you add noise tokens to every corridor attached to the room, and nothing else happens. If there's no other token left in the bag, you add a red Metagorger token to the bag. If you draw a Metagorger token, blue or red, it doesn't matter in that case, you add a Metagorger into the room you're in. If it surprise attacks, you get 1 light wound and you draw a contamination card. For Metagorger attacks, you never draw a Carnomorph attack card. Additionally, add a Shambler token into the bag. If you don't have a mutation card yet, pick one and take the Metagorger from the board. If you already have a mutation card, leave it on the board. More mutations later though. If the Metagorger manages to escape through a technical corridor, always put a red Metagorger token back into the bag. Just keep in mind that every time you would put a blue Metagorger token back into the bag, you always use a red one. In case no red ones are left, put the blue one back in. If you draw a Shambler token, take one of the Shamblers and put it in the room you're in. If you draw the Flesh Beast, put it into the room and check for surprise attacks. If you draw the Butcher, put it in the room you're in and check for surprise attacks. But keep in mind, there's only 1 Butcher throughout the entirety of the game. The Butcher is also too big to get into technical corridors, so if the Butcher would flee through one of these corridors, it does not. If any Carnomorph but the Metagorger attacks, you draw a Carnomorph attack card and see what the effect does like in the normal game. The first time you put a Shambler on the board, take the miniature from the Carnomorph Adaption card and flip the card over. Use this adaption effect on all Carnomorphs throughout the rest of the game, as long as this card is face up. Anytime a new Carnomorph enters the game for the first time, you do the same with the corresponding adaption card. The only way to disable Carnomorph adaptions is by analyzing an object in the laboratory. The object you need to analyze to disable a certain adaption is shown on the Carnomorph board. For example, to disable the Butcher's effect, you would need to analyze an egg. Now, let's take a look at attack mechanics. Attacking is the same as with the original Nemesis intruders. But this time, when you check the Carnomorph attack cards for health, there's a distinction between Metagorgers and the other Carnomorphs. You never draw 2 cards for the bigger monsters, because now they have more hit points naturally. When you kill a Metagorger, it leaves the board and you put a carcass in that room. The same thing applies to Shamblers. When you kill a Flesh Beast, however, it will turn into a Shambler and a carcass. Killing a Butcher only turns it into 2 Shamblers. It won't leave a carcass. Now let's take a look at the event phase. The event phase is a little different from a regular Nemesis game. The big difference is, after you move the time track, any Carnomorph that's not in combat will try to eat. Carnomorphs eat Metagorgers or heavy objects in the following priority order: Red Player Corpse, Intruder Egg, Intruder Carcass, Metagorger, and Blue Player Corpse. If there's more than one carnomorph in the room, the eating order is the following, from biggest to smallest. So this means the Butcher eats first, then the Flesh Beast, and after that the Shambler will eat if there's still something left, and then at last the Metagorgers. Yes, this means that Metagorgers can eat other Metagorgers. Every carnomorph only eats once in this phase. After a carnomorph has eaten, it will be fully healed. Then, if possible, you will evolve it into the next bigger carnomorph. The Butcher cannot evolve because it's already the biggest carnomorph. It can be healed, however. Remember that if a Flesh Beast would evolve into the Butcher, but the Butcher has already been killed before, it does not evolve, because there's only one Butcher in the game. Let me show you an example. The Butcher eats first. It eats the egg, which heals the Butcher. He does not evolve because he's already the biggest carnomorph. Then the Shambler eats the Intruder Carcass, which makes him evolve into the next bigger monster, which is the Flesh Beast. Afterwards, one of the Metagorgers eats. There's only another Metagorger left to eat, so it does eat the Metagorger, which makes it turn into a Shambler. If you draw a blank token, you might be lucky. All Shamblers that aren't in combat will be removed from the board and their tokens will be added back to the bag. One red Metagorger token will be added and every player performs a noise roll, then put the blank token back into the bag. If you draw a blue Metagorger token, every player performs a noise roll if not in combat. Replace the token with a red Metagorger token and put it back into the bag. If you draw a red Metagorger token, in every room where there's a Metagorger or a heavy object, place a new Metagorger. Heavy objects are player corpses, eggs, carcasses, any things that you can carry, and add only one per room. This also happens if a player is carrying a heavy object. Metagorgers spawned this way will not surprise attack. If the nest is already explored, a Metagorger will always spawn there as long as there are eggs, as they are considered heavy objects in the room. Put the red Metagorger token back into the bag. Remember, if this is the first time a carnomorph comes into play, players will choose their objective. If you draw a Shambler token or Flesh Beast token, every player performs a noise roll and you put the token back into the bag. If you happen to draw the Butcher, put the Butcher in a room with a player with a slime marker. If there's none, it appears in the room with the lowest player number. If there are multiple players with slime, it will spawn next to the player with fewer cards left in their hand. In case of a tie, the player with the lowest player number is chosen. Don't put the Butcher back into the bag. Whenever you have to draw a mutation, you actually draw 2 random mutation cards and pick one of them. Shuffle the other one back into the mutation card pile. Every player can only have one mutation. Usually, you stick with that mutation for the rest of the game. The only way to remove a mutation is by using the antidote item on you or by using the surgery room. Mutations have 2 effects. One says infected and the other one says uninfected. Anytime you have a contamination card in your hand, you can activate your mutation card. For the first time, you will flip it face up, and later, you will just announce that you activate your mutation card. The next thing you do is you scan your contamination card, and depending on the outcome, one of these 2 effects will be triggered. This costs 1 action. If the contamination card said infected, discard it to the action discard pile. If there's no sign of an infection, you take it out of the game and you draw a new contamination card. Every time you activate a mutation, you will put a mutation marker on your character board. Use ammo markers for this. Once you have 4 mutation markers, you will die immediately. There's no way to remove them, so be cautious. Don't use your mutation effects too often. If anytime during the game you get a mutation marker but you don't have a mutation yet, pick one instead. If you die because you gain a 4th mutation marker, a Shambler spawns in that room. Once the game is over and you manage to survive, you and every surviving player checks if they have a mutation card. Every player with a mutation card shuffles their entire deck and draws 4 cards. For every contamination card drawn this way, the player gains a mutation marker. If they still have less than 4, then they survive. Every player that doesn't have a mutation card at the end of the game scans all of their contamination cards. If there is no infection, they survive. If there is at least 1 infection, they'll draw a random mutation card, and at this point it doesn't matter which one. And then, just like the other players, they shuffle their deck and draw 4 cards, where every contamination card adds 1 mutation marker. And that's how you play Nemesis Carnomorph. I hope you have fun playing, and thank you for watching. Have a good day.